Are you ready to learn how to start an LLC the legal way? Let's do this. Hi, my name is Jim Hart. I am an online business attorney and the creator of the Lock It Down Legal Protection System. And today we're going to be talking about how to properly and legally, and that's the key phrase there, set up your LLC. And this is one of the core tenets of Pillar 1 of my Lock It Down Legal Protection System. Now, there are a lot of non-lawyers on YouTube and on the internet in general giving a lot of really bad advice about how and when you should be setting up an LLC for your online business. So before we go any further and talk about how to set up an LLC, what I want to share with you is just what an LLC is. It's one of the most popular business entities available today, and it stands for Limited Liability Company. And what an LLC does is it serves really two roles. It can insulate your personal assets from the debts of your business, but it also can insulate your business assets from your personal debts, which is something unique to LLCs that you don't see with typical corporations. So as you can imagine, setting up an LLC the right way is one of the core foundational steps that you need to take with your online business at some point. And if you don't set up your LLC the right way from the very beginning, you could be literally setting up a proverbial house of cards for your online business. One little misstep and the whole thing is going to come crashing down. Many online entrepreneurs and course creators in particular, when they're setting up their LLC, they will find the articles of organization from their state and they'll literally just fill them out as best they can with the information they have on hand at the time without much forethought, and then go ahead and get them filed with the Secretary of State's office in the state where they live, or maybe in a different state, that happens too, without really giving any thought to whether or not what they did was actually going to provide them with any legal protection at all. They think it is. They think they've taken this document and filled it out, and presumably they've done it correctly. And since they filed it, now they just wipe their hands, check it off the box, and say, you know what? I've got an LLC, I'm pretty cool, so I don't need to worry about that anymore. And even better, and I love this because I talk to online entrepreneurs all the time that have done this, they take the documents when they get them back from the state and they kind of file them away in a file cabinet or put them on their desk somewhere underneath a stack of paperwork and basically forget that they even filed the LLC, but they know they've got an LLC. That's worth something to me, right? Unfortunately for you, there's so much more to the filing of an LLC than just submitting everything to the Secretary of State and thinking that that's it. There's so much more to it than that. So let's jump into the 5 steps that you need to take to set up your LLC the right way and, more importantly, the legal way. Okay, so step number 1, numero uno, is to see whether or not you actually need an LLC for your business. I've talked about this in other videos. This is a really important step. There's a lot of people out there that just honestly don't need an LLC, and I typically do a 3-step analysis with any client I'm working with to determine whether or not they actually need an LLC. Step number 1 is, do you have assets to protect? If you don't have any assets to protect, then why are you setting up an LLC? Because the whole point of an LLC is to protect your assets, right? So if you don't have any assets, then you may not need an LLC. Number 2, are you in a high-risk business? In other words, are you doing or creating some sort of course where it is likely that somebody might sue you at some point for the information you're providing in that course? If that's the case, then yes, you may want to think about setting up an LLC. Number 3, are you earning any money from your business currently? And if you are earning money, then it might make sense to go ahead and take some money from the business and set up that LLC, because like I said, the legal protection goes both ways. You can protect your personal assets from the business, and you can also protect your business assets from personal liabilities. So for example, if you're driving home and you hit somebody crossing the road by mistake or get in a car crash or something like that, and you get sued, then they could theoretically come after the assets of your business. That's not something you want. So if you have an LLC in place, then you can help to shield your business from that liability. All right, the second step in setting up your LLC the right way is you need to pick a name. And this doesn't have to be like the best name in the world. This does not have to be the name of your brand. Ultimately, it doesn't need to be the name of the main product you're selling. It can be really anything you want. You just have to make sure that somebody else isn't already using the name. So typically you can do a search on the Secretary of State's website where you're going to be filing the LLC to see if anyone else has come up with that name. If they're using the same name, then your filing is going to get rejected. So you want to make sure you come up with something else. And then make sure when you file your articles of organization, you put the little LLC or limited liability company behind the name to identify your company as an LLC. All right, now step 2A, I'm going to say, is actually to pick the state where you're going to file the LLC. This really isn't much of a step because for almost all of you out there, it needs to be the state where you're actually living in, residing in, and operating the business. Now, could it be an issue if you live abroad and you're operating a business in the United States? Yes. Then you do have a little bit more flexibility about where you're going to set up the LLC, but typically it's going to be the state where you claim citizenship, where you have residency. So even if you're living somewhere else, if you have a permanent address in the United States, then you probably would pick that state. And if you don't have a permanent address in the United States, if you're, a digital nomad who's wandering the world and blogging and talking about your travels and living the life of everyone's dreams, really, I would love to be doing that. I wish I could. Instead, I'm looking at crappy weather here in North Carolina today. So yeah, if you're doing that, then you can kind of pick whatever state you want. And then you can think about, do you want to form in a state like, Wyoming or, I don't know, Nevada or someplace like that? Or do you want to form in a state where if you did come back to the United States, you would want to visit and spend some time in that state? And so those are things to think about and make that decision. Now, for those of you that are out in Nevada and Wyoming, I'm not saying that we don't want to go visit you out there. I mean, Nevada is great between Tahoe and, Las Vegas. Lovely state, love it. The gambling is cool. Wyoming, you've got those national parks and rolling hills. And honestly, I've driven through Wyoming. It is an absolutely beautiful state. But what I'm talking about is you've got very low populations there, so there's other people that I'm really messing this up. Let's just move on to the next step. So step number 3 is to have a proper business address. This is a big deal. A lot of people mess this up. They'll use their home address or the address of the apartment where they're staying with 5 roommates or some, and that's fine. You can do that if you want. If you are truly running a blog out of your bedroom and you live in an apartment and you've been there for 10 years and you haven't moved, sure, go ahead, knock yourself out. Use your home address. I typically recommend, however, to keep the business and personal separate. Also for privacy reasons, you don't want everyone knowing necessarily where you live, that you pick a separate address. And there are multiple options for that. I was just on a phone call with somebody yesterday. He asked me for some recommendations, and here are my recommendations. You can go to a mailboxes, etc. You can go to UPS store, Earth Class Mail, one of these type of services, or you could rent a virtual address at a Regus or something like that, or maybe there's virtual office space where you live that you can get a virtual office address for $50, $100 a month that you can use as your address for your business. You just want to pick something and you want to use that as opposed to necessarily your home address. Anyway, that's personal preference, but that's what I think is the better option, is to pick that virtual address for the business. Number 4, and I've done a ton of videos on this, so make sure you check them out, but you need to hire a corporate registered agent. For those of you out there who are course creators, coaches, bloggers, social media influencers, those type of things, and you're building a business online, the reason why so many people, myself included, are building a business online is we want lifestyle freedom, we want financial freedom, we want the freedom to go and travel and work from wherever and whenever we want. And if you are tied to your home address or your business address where you're not gonna be 40 hours a week, Monday through Friday, if you are not tied to that address all the time, then you don't want to use that address as your registered agent, and you don't want to name yourself as your registered agent. Having a registered agent is kind of like insurance to make sure that if you get served with some sort of legal documents, you will get those documents. You don't need to worry that you wouldn't be served and miss something really important and then have a judgment entered against you. So for the $100, $200 a year it costs to get your registered agent, I highly recommend picking a service to do that. We offer it. There should be a link down in the description below, but you by no means need to use us. You can use whoever you want as long as you're comfortable with them. There's a lot of great companies out there that provide this service. You do have to be careful though. If you sign up with companies other than my company, then they may very well try and upsell you a bunch of stuff that you don't need. But if you go to the link down below, you can sign up for us to serve as your registered agent, and that's basically what we're gonna do for you. And then finally, step 5 is to go ahead and file your paperwork in the state where you are operating. We already touched about that in step 2A, but I'm just reiterating it here. File your paperwork in the state where you live. For some states, you can do it electronically. Other states, you have to print it off and mail it in. Other states, you can fax it in. It just depends on the state you live in. Some states it takes a day or two to get back. Other states it takes like 2 weeks to get back, like North Carolina. Come on, North Carolina, let's get with it. Can you tell that that's like a pet peeve of mine? That the fact that it takes so freaking long to get your LLC paperwork back in this state. Come on, we're supposed to be cutting edge. We've got the triangle, we got Research Triangle Park, but we can't get our LLC paperwork back in like 2 days. Anyway. Once you have your LLC paperwork back from the state, there are a whole bunch of other things that you need to do to make sure your LLC is set up correctly. And I've done a video right here that talks about all of those things rather than take up any more air in this video today. Go to that video, check it out. I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching, folks. Bye-bye.